Okay, welcome everybody. Today is, what is it, Monday, October 4th, and this is the Audit/Financial Committee of the Orange County IDA and the Orange County Orange County Funding Corporation. I keep on saying that wrong because it used to be an Orange County Capital Funding Corporation, right? And today, it's more of just a committee meeting. We're going to go over the proposed 2022 annual budget, make any revisions we want to it, with the purpose to try to have this voted on at our next regularly scheduled meeting in 2 weeks. We also want to go over some information that we've asked to be shared with all the members in regards to our investment policy and the laws that are around public authorities and public benefit corporations for investing, as well as anything else that we want to come up in regards to these. So we'll jump right in, and I'll hand it back over to Bill. And Bill, you can walk us through. Let's do the budget first. That's the purpose of this meeting, and as an agenda item number 1. So
absolutely. And I did have on there talking about possible CFO for hire, and I've done some research on that. I don't know if I'm totally ready to present it to you the way I want to, especially to be able to compare it to other options like what we're doing right now. But certainly I want to make sure we get through this budget, both OCIDA and OCFC. I think you all know, I'm just going to say this from the get-go. To a degree, I'm feeling in the dark here a little bit, kind of seeing my way. So, but that was understood. I think that was the way, the chairman laid it out. Let's go for it. Work with Kelly and reviewing all of this after I put it together and during. And I feel pretty good about it. And there are going to be some questions, going to be some homework afterwards. It's certainly to get ready so it's at a place where, at a point where you can approve it on the 20th, hopefully. But I just like to go item by item if we could.
Yeah.
Starting with OCIDA. So this is one we're looking at right here.
It says draft 1 on top?
Yes, draft 1. It's draft 1 for both of these, OCFC and OCIDA. Any other iterations, I'll number them from there. I do put the data revision at the top left just so we can keep track of that as well. And obviously we're going to mostly focus on the first column, 2022 proposed. The third and fourth column is 2021 and 2020, obviously, and then I do show kind of a delta in the second column between last year and what we're proposing for this year. Last year approved budget, not obviously what was spent. As you see, we a couple of months ago we went through year to date to see where we are. Okay, item by item here. Revenue. So this is you see revenue is a much smaller section. Obviously, there are limited sources for us. For the most part, it's fees for projects coming through, and obviously I had to make some estimates here. For fees, I estimated that in 2022 that we'll have 3 applications, and I had to make them, so I had to kind of, it's conjecture really. I'm fantasizing what they'll be. I have a beverage manufacturer here, a distribution center, and a hotel. Beverage manufacturer I estimated at $50 million, the distribution center at $40 million, and a $15 million hotel. Based on a $50 million beverage manufacturer, that's the capital expenditure, of course, that's $50 million. $40 million distribution center, and a $15 million hotel.
And Bill, can you go over the columns again? So 2020 is the budgeted amount or the actual?
These are budgeted amounts.
So 2020 is budget. 2021 was budget?
Yep. And I looked at actuals to see where we are and the notes that we made when we reviewed it, but since it's a partial year, still a little difficult to compare apples to apples that way if I use a partial year there. So I did use the approved budget amount. So yeah, based upon what our fee schedule is, and for example, a manufacturer, we charge to apply for incentives, 1% of the first $2 million of the project. So let's say it's this one, for example, beverage manufacturer, $50 million, 1% of the first $2 million, and then 0.5% for the remainder. So the other $48 million in this case. With distribution centers and hotels, they were kind of de-incentivizing or at least making higher fees, and that's 1% of the whole project. So it doesn't step down to 0.5%; it stays at 1% for both distribution centers and for hotels. So that's how I calculated using that fee schedule. That's how I calculated the figure for fees there. So that's $810,000 comes from that. These other fees, these are for projects where we're still receiving fees after the fact. They're not closing fees. for example, IBM, we were getting, fees from them every year, so that's gonna be ending now because, they terminated their pilot. We are only gonna be getting, it looks like, fees coming from, Orange County Community College, SUNY Orange, that's that 33.3. And that was a set budget amount we've gotten from them the last few years. That looks to be the only project where we get these residual fees. And I believe that was for, it looked like, try to research this, Kelly and I, it looked like it was for their Business Training and Development Center. I don't have a lot of details on what that project is, but that's where that originates from, that fee. IDA administrative fees, now this is application for the most part. So and if you recall, I may have mentioned in the past, application fee is $5,000 to apply. That's just the application fee, not the fees, the closing fees that I described before. And we split that. $2,500 goes to bond counsel, and $2,500 stays with the IDA. So this is estimating a total between those two lines, IDA administrative fees and then pass-through legal fees, a total of $20,000. So that's 4 applications that I'm estimating that we'll receive. And we keep half that, they keep the other half. If that's clear. So between the two 10,000, that's 20,000. That's $5,000 application fee for 4 projects.
And that's based upon our fee schedule as it exists today.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not, if you're regardless of who the bond counsel is or.
Yes, absolutely. Those are our fees that we levy, we set and levy. Interest earnings, this is in it, go ahead, sure.
For the college, the fees decreases every year.
It looks like it was budgeted for that exact amount for the last several years in a row. That's what the fees will continue to be. And interest earnings, now this is one of these fuzzy areas for me. This I take this as earnings on investments. And I had that number low because of what the environment is right now on rates. So it's, and that's a number that I could get a little finer with, frankly. I think when we get a little closer on investments, I can come up with a more accurate number of what that would be, worth it to estimate that better. Next item after that is client rents. And by the way, I'm going to send you all the electronic copy. I don't want to, there are a lot of tabs. I don't want to really confuse you. I want to start with this, but you'll see tabs at the bottom. You can see where I have separate tabs where I do some of the math behind some of these numbers. Like client rents. Rents received is a tab that I have there. And based upon what our new rent rates are for Middletown and our plan to step away from at least 3 of the buildings in New Windsor at the end of the year because those leases have expired, because we're looking to get out of Newburgh and have the landlord take over the rents there. I estimated the rents we'd received based upon those factors. And also based upon my communication with the Middletown clients, there are a couple that I think may not sign the new lease because of the terms and other factors, including where they are with the business. So I did my best to try and estimate that, and I have rents received at just under $50,000, $48,488.
Some of those items that you just spoke about is things that we still need to vote upon. So it's things that will be coming up in the next month or 2 or 3 before the end of the year that we'll be actually physically getting a detailed discussion about. And then if we decide to vote on it, we will. But, okay.
Recovered, that seems to be monies that were put out and are brought back. We don't do loans. We're not allowed to do that. So that appears to be the Warwick Valley LDC, the $2 million that was given for the Warwick Accelerator, CBD Accelerator. And it looked like it was booked the right time because it looks like we're going to get it back in calendar year 2021. That is on its way, actually. Warwick received that funding, and we're going through the process right now. Mike, you may have seen some of the communications there with the LDC's legal counsel and such, just trying to get everything in place so that we can get that money, which would be great. So that's, but I don't foresee any other recovered funds for this year. Any questions on revenues at all? Thanks.
No, pretty simple, straightforward.
Thanks, Howard.
That gave me a lot of extra.
I did, right? I thought I had a budget, I didn't see it on your desk, so I give you another set. We just went through here, we're about to start expenses. Okay, for, now getting into salaries, and I will say that salaries and benefits was one line item, and I broke them out, so that's why you see, like, benefits doesn't have, figures for 21 and 20, and those, the past figures there for salaries is higher, well, they were a lot higher anyway, but it did include benefits, and again, I broke that out to try and make it a little, clearer for myself and for you. So salaries, just so you know what I have in there, I have a CEO, I have, Kelly, the project manager, I have part-time administrative assistant starting in January, so I have a full year of that. And then I have, this is kind of what we talked about when I met with you all separately, I have 6 months of COO position being back in there. So that's what I'm starting with, is anticipating being busy and getting into a couple of special projects we talked about and putting that back in there. Benefits, I estimate at basically what our premium is for 2 people. That would be CEO and the project manager for 12 months. We're currently paying that for the project manager right now, and then 6 months of benefits for COO position. And then I estimated below that payroll taxes and fees, essentially did that around 10% for Social Security, Medicare, and fees from our HR services company in there. That's kind of a guesstimate, that figure. Next is the auditors. That's based upon the past, and I've just added a few $1,000s there, well, $2,100 there, just assuming that the rate will go up, but that's essentially what that is. Management expense, that was GTG, that is no longer there. Just like AWOW, no longer there. Special initiatives, my understanding from asking around was that was more of a slush fund. So there was some money put in there and a little bit of, what stuff they need to be purchased, or perhaps more fees to GTG, that was in there. Insurance, this has been something we're just trying to make sure we have this 100% right, but this seems to be our building insurance, the crime, I moved building insurance, I'm sorry. The crime policy we talked about, and directors and officers insurance, totaling $8,900. I do have a meeting later this week with our insurance agent where I'm going to get a better handle on all of our coverages and policies and such. So that's what we're estimating there. Office supplies and postage. Now, office supply also includes our copier rentals. We have a copier that we rent at the headquarters in Friday Lane, and the copier in the Middletown Accelerator. So that's in there, as well as I added about $3,000 in office supplies and postage, but still a much lower figure than what they were used to. Professional fees. Now, there are a number of things that are in here. So I'll call CFO services, so we're using UHY for. I also have a minutes taker there, someone to take minutes for our meetings in there at 25 hours a month. Also, we use a system called Inform Analytics to do cost-benefit analyses for our IDA projects. There's a fee in there as well. Any fees that we pay the labor auditors, and most of those are borne by the applicant, that's in there. Paris reporting, you recall we paid $2,000 to Harris Beach last year to prepare our Paris report. And when lobbyists were paid in the past, they came out of here. So this is also, you see a $77,000 savings based on what I estimate we need. So that figure is just over $30,000.
Bill, on one of those items you talked about was the labor analysis.
Yes.
Labor. So can you go into more detail of how is that accounted for today, or how was it accounted for? How did it change? Because we have to revisit that to figure out what's the best way to do that, especially if we're soliciting that. So how is it handled today? Like, so an applicant comes in.
Yeah, so we used to, say Legoland, for example, when Legoland applied, the cost was borne for local labor auditing was borne by us. We changed that policy down the line, and now it's borne by the applicant. However, we charge for it. And I'll go to the schedule. In our fee schedule, it actually shows what the local labor kind of levy is for that. We charge, we take it, goes in escrow, and we use that fund essentially to pay, in this case, Loki Brill for their monthly work that they do. I'm looking at billing, from the last 2 years.
So where would the revenue be in the revenue side? Which line item would the revenue come in, do you know?
The revenue when we, in a pass-through kind of setting?
And if you don't have it, it's fine.
No,
that we should know.
That may not
Because we
be
have-
in there.
So we have to account for it up on the top side, on the
Yeah.
top side of the ledger, if it's something we're charging, and then, because if it's not being paid directly by the applicants by the applicants to the consultant, not direct, if it's coming through us, we should account for it on both sides.
Yep.
The revenue in and the expense out.
Yeah, I'm looking at conference expense zero there. Don't you think, the CEOs, there will be conferences, one
Absolutely.
or two to attend?
So conferences, that's a great question. The line above it, travel, lodging, and meals, those are the expenses for us to attend a conference, staff or board to attend a conference. That's what that is, and I have another sheet, so let me just tell you that, and I'll properly answer your question in a second. I have the CEO going to 2 conferences, a total of, with travel expense, $3,650. I had the COO going to 1 conference for $700, and I was thinking that was the one I just came from, the New York State EDC. So I could, the CEO could travel with the COO if that works out. And then I have a project manager going to 1. So I have a total of $5,800 in training expenses from registration, travel, meals, and such. Now, the conference expense you asked about, Doctor, that was when the accelerator put their own conferences on. That they did a CBD accelerator conference on hemp and CBD. They did a wearable tech, which is wearable fashion conference, and we're not looking to do those. So that's what those expenses were for those activities.
Bill, another question would be in this area, you may want to break out on professional services a subcategory for the audit stuff, just because it's got such a microscope on it.
Right.
And then.
Now, auditing is separate, you're saying?
Yep, no, well, auditors are more, I would say, financial auditors.
Yeah.
That's more on
You mean the local labor?
on the local labor stuff, under professional fees, maybe a subcategory for that, so we can just understand that and track that a little bit.
Great.
Also in this area, and obviously I didn't read the whole thing yet, where would we put general counsel fees? And that should be potentially, and you might have that separately
Yeah.
someplace, but if
That's
it's,
down in legal, yeah.
okay. Okay, so I didn't go that far yet, okay, thank you.
Is that on the next page?
It's on,
I'm not sure what the
we'll get to it when we
Yeah,
get to it,
sure.
thank you.
Sure, sure.
Keep on going.
Okay, so building expense now, and a lot of this obviously is tied to all the accelerator locations. Building insurance, that's $24,000. I have that. That was $20,700 last year in building insurance. I think there's a better title for it. Rents. Now, this is, of course, our expenses, what we're paying for rent. One of the tabs you'll see in the electronic version is rents and CAMs paid. So I am assuming that we pay Crotty Lane for 12 months, Middletown for 11 months. Our lease expires there in November, about November 20th, I think it is, 22nd. And then 5 months of building 2416 at Avenue of Americas, 6 months building 2422-200. And the other 3 at Avenue of Americas, we expect to be out of by the end of this calendar year. So I have 0 months for that. I have 0 months for Broadway, 603 and 605. And 12 months of the Manor House in Warwick, but there's virtually no cost for that. And then I have added up utilities and other CAMs expenses. So now to go back to the budget, adding all that up, and again, you'll be able to see the detail in the electronic version. But building rent, $154,000. That's it. 0 rent for Newburgh and Highland Falls. Leaving 3 out of 5. We will be leaving 3 out of the 5 Avenue of the America buildings in New Windsor. Staying in Middletown through November of 22, and staying in Crosby through 22. That's building rent. Building utilities, again, on the same tab, you'll be able to see how that's all tabulated based on what we've been paying. That also assumes not paying any utilities in Newburgh and Highland Falls, leaving 3 buildings in New Windsor, and our plan for Middletown and Friday as well. Building repairs, this used to be a lot of money in the fund for this, but they cut it back when they had to tighten the budget. But I'm only expecting this for repairs for accelerator buildings. I'm hoping there's none, but things may come up in that time that we have to fix something. We've had a couple small things already this past year. Building maintenance, this is where I've actually included a lot of what I consider CAM in the matrix that I've shared with you for rents and such, and what we're paying everywhere. A lot of this is under the CAM categories. But you see snow removal, cleaning, lawn, trash. I could break these out as well, but they were lumped together. So.
And some are direct contracts to us, and other ones are through our landlords?
Correct. Middletown, for example, we pay a CAM charge to them.
As a prorated share of the space.
Exactly. In some cases, we're paying those individual, extra charges for, paying them directly.
Now, can we put the two together, building repairs? Because all this fall under depreciation, taking care of depreciation.
Precision?
No, depreciation, like,
Position?
depreciation.
I'm sorry, depreciation, I apologize.
Can both these two be combined?
Combined?
I don't know if we're depreciating anything, because we don't own anything. So I don't think we're going through depreciation, Doctor, because we don't own it. These are repairs that we're doing ad hoc in lieu of our landlords doing.
Yeah, it's leaseholder.
As a leaseholder. So it could be if we broke a door or something like that, it's something that I think is,
Minor items.
yeah, minor.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, that's building maintenance. Renovations, I really put in, we're not expecting any renovations. I haven't shared this with the board yet, but I have had interest from a nonprofit in the area interested in subleasing some space in the Friday Lane headquarters. And I think it's an agency that there could be really good synergy with. So just gonna have them look at the space and come up with terms and propose it to the board. If it's something you're interested in, that $3,000 is for potentially any alterations that need to be made to the space to accommodate another vendor or another tenant in there. That's what that is. Cleaning. Cleaning I included in maintenance above. That could be broken out. And in part, just so you know, the reason I didn't have a separate line item is just because cleaning is included in some of our CAM's expenses on that the rent matrix where I show what we're paying everywhere, and it's a little more complicated to break it out. So I kept it in with the other expenses. I could break that out if you really want to see that separately. It's a separate line item. But I do have an estimated amount that is figured in building maintenance above. Internet and telephones. This used to be called information technology, I think what they called this. But when I think of IT, I think of that IT support. So this is internet and telephones in Crotty Lane, in Middletown, Avenue of the Americas, and at Warwick. And those are, you see the rates are lower than what you saw for 2021. I think we were in Middletown, we were paying $1,500 a month for internet, and we got that down to a couple $100. So we have lowered that, and we have one other location we're still looking to lower. So I hope to get that even lower, but that's what that is. That's internet and telephones at all our sites. And equipment and maintenance. Now, we don't have a lot of equipment, but one piece of equipment we do currently own is a laser fabric cutter that's being used at the Avenue of Americas in New Windsor, the fashion manufacturing pod, mostly by Mello, that manufacturer, and a couple other tenants in New Windsor and Newburgh use it. If we had to maintain that, that's really one of the only pieces of equipment I can imagine. So I threw a few bucks in there. They have done maintenance on that machine in the past. If we completely divest ourselves of the New Windsor accelerator, this is more of an accelerator note, but that's something we do have a couple pieces of equipment that we own. The laser fabric cutter, an embroidery machine. We own that right now, and my thought would be to sell it at fair market value to Mello or one of those users, because they're the ones that are using it all the time. We obviously don't have a need for a laser cutter ourselves. But in that time, until that time, I have $1,000 in there in case we need to do maintenance on that machine, essentially. Agency support costs. Now, these are the funds. Okay, clean. Okay. These are other agencies that apply for IDA support for work they do that supports economic development one way or another, workforce development, youth development. That was, I think, a new direction they went, working with the Orange County Youth Bureau. So I have those in there, and Orange County Foreign Trade Zone as well. That's been something IDA supported for years to help with the promotion of that service. So I have that in there. I have the Youth Bureau in there as well, and I have a couple others that you see that I'm putting in the budget now. I have sent applications to, we developed an application that we sent to these agencies and asked them to get us that application back by the end of this week as far as what they're looking to, what kind of support they're looking for, what they'll do, how they'll measure it, what the deliverables are, and so on and so forth. So we certainly don't have to do all or any of those, but those are, a number of these we've supported for years, and I could give my own pitch as to why I think they're, could be worthwhile, but let's let them tell their, make their own pitches, and I'll relay that to you when we get those applications in.
Yeah, so I would think that would be, one, it would be a board decision of what we want to do in that realm. And if we want to do it at a committee level or at a board meeting level, they would come in and make a pitch to us with a, with a small presentation so we can decide upon that. And then if and when we decide upon that, if they want to get some of those funds, they would have to put a requisition in for that type of stuff, have to be reviewed by staff and approved by board. So a little questionable because I don't know exactly what Women's Enterprise Development Center is or what the HB Ag Development Corp really actually does. I understand the Foreign Trade Zone. I've been to many meetings with that and whatnot. So more information is going to help us be able to make better educated decisions in regards to that.
Could you foresee making time for presentations?
I think we would have to. I think we would have to because I don't think any of us really understand it. The other thing that we would potentially maybe want to think about is a set amount, meaning like instead of one being 25,000, one being 23. What's the big difference? Unless there's a difference in scale, maybe there's like a bigger, what do we call it, a bigger agency support and a medium agency support. If there's just, but we should probably try to stay consistent if we can. But then again, I don't know exactly what they do because literally, I mean, we've got to tie what they're supporting us on and our mission. If it's not directly supported, then maybe they should be soliciting this someplace else. I'm not sure. So it's all stuff to be talked about and decided upon by the board once we get more information. But it's good to budget it since it's been budgeted in the past, but it's something that we can figure out moving forward.
Understood. Okay, so that's agency support, and then project expenditures. All these three line items were in there in the budget for years. You recall that I spoke to you separately about shovel ready. So I put an amount in there. We get into that when we talk about that project, that potential project. But project expenditures and research and support, I'm not sure what those figures were. I understood that they paid even Loki Brill to do some research on, I think when there's a problem with silt in the creek for Legoland. I guess they paid Loki Brill to do some research on that. I'm not sure why, where that came from or what, but that's the only anecdote I could even come up with for that. But I'm not sure what those figures are for. I don't know that we're missing anything either. So that's those. Unfortunately, that's a little fuzzy for me right there. That part.
Was there an actual expenditure for that, or that was just a budget item and they didn't use it? Do we know?
That's a great question. Let me.
That's all. I mean, again, I know we're working
question.
off of a budget and we have to, but I mean, because like to Mike's point, like some of those in the support category, some of those we didn't pay anything to yet, even though they have 25. It was budgeted for that. We haven't given them any money as of yet, and then we decided we want to.
We've not done anything.
Well, correct. So we don't. That's all.
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely will see what we've actually spent in that area. Now legal. So the first is general counsel. So that in the past, counsel was paid $92,000 and change in 2019 and $83,000 and change last year. So I bumped that up just a little bit because I have a lot of questions based on when we get general counsel. So just assuming all of us kind of, kind of learn the ropes, I have it generally same figure, but just increased it a little bit. The legal pass through, those are the fees, the outflow of the fees we're collecting. At the top there, for application fees, $10,000, pass through legal fees and the revenues, the expense side of that when we pay it back out. And other expenses. I did reorganize this a little bit, so that's why you see some of the empty, I broke some things out, so you see some empty values for past years. IT support and audiovisual, that's what we're using 88 for, and that will also include website maintenance, because we have another pretty sizable fee that we're paying to maintain the Accelerator website, and we'll see where we go with that. And I certainly don't look to be spending that kind of money anymore. So really for basically what we're spending now, I want to include website maintenance as well in there. That's what that figure is. That was a much higher amount before. Marketing and PR, they had a lot of things in here before, but really what I have in here is developing new marketing materials. That's something a project I think we need to undertake. New year, new directions, new team. I think it should be reflected on materials. I want to do it economically, but we do need to bring some new things in. This also includes graphic design, ongoing, digital media support, social media, email marketing, things like that, press releases. I also have the advertisement we pay for one of the local websites here. And I moved website maintenance, as I mentioned, to IT and audiovisual. So that's marketing and PR in there. And memberships, this also used to be included in marketing. I guess a lot of things were dumped into the marketing line item. But I broke this out. This is $3,000 for memberships. For example, our annual dues to New York State EDC. I'm assuming that we'd have, say, one other membership there that would be, I think, fitting. So I had that figure in there. And then training and education, in addition to the conferences I mentioned higher up. This is really, I've categorized this as board and staff, additional board and staff training. I actually had a tab for that where I calculated that, where the other trainings, a training on prevailing wage on that new law, board retreat, we talked about that, and I have one other at $1,500. So that's what those figures are. So I did mention in my presentation to you that I'd like to make sure that training and ongoing training and education is something that we ensure for board and staff. That's in there as well. And then you got total expenses there, $1.363 million, and a net loss of $439,000. But you're seeing obviously a difference just in expenses, a difference of $2.4 million from what was budgeted last year, from all the work that this board did to trim the fat, and then us trying to tighten the belt in certain areas even more. So that's OCIDA, draft number 1.
Good job.
Want to go over to OCFC? Or you want to
Any questions, any things that we want to talk about on the IDA side of things? Any line items that you think we need to add, subtract? Not specific dollar amounts, but is there any specific?
I just think the one thing that skews the curve is that $2 million that got covered in 2021, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it makes, this year look pretty good, right? But, that means, to your point, there's a bunch of work that's gone in to get that to only a $500,000 loss. I mean, really, it was a $2.5 million loss. Right. There was that one-time $2 million thing. That's just, that kind of skews the curve on the whole piece, yeah.
How much do you have in there for the low-key growth service as a net cost for the labor monitor? I only ask because the RFP is out, and the way I structured the RFP, I basically said, whoever the labor monitor is, you got to build a client directly. The only time I have in the RFP that the IDA board would pay them is if a project was completely closed out and you had a question about it. So I mean, that's just like, I do a lot of planning and zoning work in my prior life, and somebody comes before a planning board or a zoning board, the applicant pays my fees, the applicant pays the engineer's fees. So I've structured that RFP, if you get any takers, as everything's paid by the monitored project.
So we would decide through this RFP process who it would be and at what rate, and then we would amend our schedule of charges, and then the applicants would have to pay that.
and enter into a, the
And enter-
applicant would enter into a direct contract with the labor monitor, take us out of that middle dispute over who's gonna pay what type thing. And the only time you'd be on the hook is if the
If we had
project
to
is
use
done,
them,
then you need to call them in for some questions.
So that would be an hourly rate or whatever.
Be an hourly rate, and I asked that, I sent it to low-key Brill, I sent it to a bunch of engineering
Sure.
firms, and said, propose your own fee structure.
Understood.
So I don't know what.
I don't have any, what you just described, where if we send somebody out on a closed project, it's all just in and out, essentially.
So there's no billing here.
There isn't, but I could put a small amount for that.
No,
That's what you described.
I wouldn't necessarily, I
Okay.
just, if there's a place to cut, that's all.
Yeah. No, I didn't have it in there. It's all in and out is the way I developed that. We go to OCFC? Take your time, please, no rush.
Yeah, I think so. Doctor, you good? Move to the next one? Yeah. We can always come back to this if we need.
Yes, absolutely.
The first draft of it, and
Sorry,
we're gonna get it in,
much smaller, much
we're
simpler.
gonna get it electronically as well, so.
It's good, yeah.
Okay, so starting in revenues, of course, closing fees, essentially, if I'm understanding this right from what I've looked into, these are closing fees for bond transactions, essentially, because that's what OCFC, a product of the OCFC, not of OCIDA. And we don't have anything in the pipeline right now. We have talked to a couple of would-be applicants, but they had not applied, so with nothing in the pipeline. A little different than expecting to get an IDA application. I think, those are more likely, and I've had a number of conversations with potential applicants, so I do expect that we have, say, 3 or more applications next year. Bond, I would love to do a bond deal, but I don't have it in the pipeline, as I said, so I don't have it budgeted there. So now a lot of this, the work of OCFC and a lot of what's in the budget, of course, has to do with the resiliency loan fund. So, which I don't pretend to have a complete handle on the mechanics of that, but I think Kelly and I've gone through this, and I think we've got a lot of it together properly. So we expect it's a 2-year loan for most folks. So what they had estimated for 2021 in loan principal received, actually using that same amount for this year. I think kind of to Dean's point, we've got to just check that with how we're coming along as we get closer here and see if that's a number I need to revise. But that's basically loan principal, loan interest, again, using the same figure for 2022 here. And interest earnings, I'm not sure I think interest earnings, again, I'm assuming is from investments, OCFC investments in CD money markets, for example. That's what those are.
So in this, correct me, please, if we take 2 years, the 205,300 plus the 205,300 equals 410,600, and we loaned out 500,000.
We did. And
So that's taking into account a percentage. I think I said, what's the right term, that our auditors asked us to do. So I think it was 70,000 last year.
yes,
Potential, I don't want to call it more write-offs.
Bad debt?
Bad debt, whatever.
essentially. County one.
Yeah, so.
So, there's a little revenue, little payments left there from what you're saying, right? You add that 70 in there, we're still short of 500, but that's not assuming that everything's coming in at this time. So those are numbers where obviously that they're not going to be exact right there, but I'm not sure how to estimate them much more accurately, without seeking some outside help for that. I'll jump it down to expenses. Administrative expense, that is essentially what we're, that $1,300 you're seeing is essentially what we're paying UHY to manage it, really to do the bookkeeping, just for OCFC. That's the bookkeeping. This is before we ask them to kind of up their engagement by managing the resiliency loan and such. This is just what we had been, for a while, had engaged with them to do bookkeeping for both agencies, but this is the portion for OCFC. Auditor, that's the audit portion. Again, I just increased that amount, assuming that rate is going to go up. Insurance, this is the only policy we see for OCFC is professional liability, which is essentially the directors and officers of insurance for OCFC at 16, for 2021, it was 16,138. So I use 16.5. Legal, this was general counsel again, what we paid at the time Kevin Dowd for his work for OCFC. And last year, we paid him, $10,585. So I just had that up somewhat to 12. Loan program, this is a figure, I'm not sure what this 85,000 was. I know. I don't believe so. I think that's kind of a mystery number, what that line item was, loan program. Loan program administration, however, was the portion of our fee to UHY that covers their management of the resiliency loan program. And there is software that was purchased to help manage this program internally, Down Home, something it was called. So we have to pay that every year to use that software. We now pay for it for UHY to use it, at least for this year, the plan. So, and that does represent, this figure represents an increased fee from UHY to manage this, because again, it was being managed, the loan program was generally being managed internally by the former CFO. So that's why that number goes up from a couple of years. And then project expenditures. This seems to be OCFC project payouts, and I have a hefty number in there, but that's because we have not yet paid out for the Heritage Trail. The county applied for $1 million for the extension of Heritage Trail from Goshen to Middletown, and that was delayed for a couple of reasons, CSX crossings, right, and right, mostly that. So Conrail, exactly right, thanks. So the county, we've been in discussions with the county attorney's office and Langdon, one of his municipal attorneys, working on an extension, requesting an extension into 2022 to expend those funds and to be reimbursed. So that's why I had that. I'm not 100% sure, honestly, if that's how we account for that, if the $1 million goes into expenditures or if it's more of a capital expenditure. But since there was that category there, it seemed like that the Heritage Trail project fit into that. So I have that in there. That's it for the OCFC budget.
So that project is complete, it just said we have to be funded?
It's not complete. It's complete to, it's past, I'm blanking on the road there by Amy's in the back.
Eager?
No, the one that crosses 17M. Oh my gosh. It's just like the back of my hand.
But the portion that they completed the work, is the work has been completed, it just has to be.
Perfect.
This is the Harris Trail?
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of work still being done on the Harris Trail. Yeah, we just got title from Conrail to be able to deal with some bridges that were an issue.
This was the original contract that was.
The $1 million is set aside for generally, it's extra, it's money left. If the county has other expenses associated with Heritage Trail, the funding corporation has agreed to pay for them up to $1 million. So it's not just for the bridges necessarily.
I think it's segment 3, I want to say. So it is, I think it'll be 4 segments to get all the way to actually to Ingracia Road past downtown Middletown. So I believe this is segment 3, which, as I said, is just, the work isn't completely done yet. I'm still not going to come up with that road name, but.
Questions, concerns, additions, subtractions? If we don't, we can take a look at it as we get it additionally in electronic format with some of the calculations. And the idea is that we'll look at this at this month's board, our regularly scheduled board meeting. Hopefully, if we all agree, we can pass it. If we don't, then we can table it and do it the following month. But it's always good to have it a good 2 months ahead of the end of the year. And this is, it's more of a Kentucky windage, here's a snapshot, and we always have the rights to go above or below, and anything in between and change it. But it's just the way that we do it, and it's part of parish reporting, I think, as well.
Correct. That's the only urgency is sometime, I believe in November, you're supposed to get it into Paris. You're supposed to put your next year's budget in there.
Cool.
So then if that's the case, we should have something past the next meeting, then it has to be in by November, is that the deadline?
We still have a meeting in November, but I think ideally they've in the past, the budget was approved at the October board meeting.
Good practice.
Yeah.
Cool, all right, what else you got going on, Bill?
Well, you want to talk about investments?
Sure. Tell us what you gave us.
So this really just kind of redistributed the investment policy, our investment policy. Can be revised. The other thing I didn't include was the list of, it was a resolution that approved the financial institutions that we can work with. I have shared that with you before. I can share that again if you like. And then this is the public authorities law that really dictates what we can invest and what we can't. And I know you've been tied up for the last few days with some court proceedings, but I think, Chairman, you were looking to understand like excerpts from this that actually dictate what we can and cannot invest in.
Yeah, so basically, what I asked for was that all of us would receive the basic guts of the information, right? Not only what our inherited investment policy is, because we want to take a look at that, and we can revise any type of policy that we want at any time, but take a look at that. So that's a little bit of homework to take back and see if there's anything in there that makes sense, or more importantly, doesn't make sense, or anything that we want to add. And then on this side, the public law, basically to better understand what we're being regulated by. The idea, hopefully, is that educated minds can come together to figure out what these two documents mean, and we would be able to move forward with some sort of decision to do something with the excess money that we have that is in excess of what we're budgeting for. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to try to get some interest income off of that money. And historically, since we've been on the board since March, we really haven't. So it's something that I think is, it's past due, but it's something that we have to feel comfortable with as well. And a comfort level is obviously wasn't obtained at the last meeting, so we tabled it. And this is one way to get towards being able to make a decision and feel more comfortable with making those decisions. And we may not. If we continue to not feel comfortable with making those decisions, then we'll continue to sit on some of this excess money that we have in account, but knowing that the proposed budget is burning through $500 million of that money. And for the foreseeable future, while we don't do longer term budgets, 5 or 10-year budget plans or something like that, it's something maybe at a board retreat we can envision so that we can better understand where we're going to be, so we can plan accordingly. It's tough to do as all new members, but something that I think any good board would do is try to figure out what's going to be the future and what's allowed by regulation, what are we allowed to do, but more importantly, I think while it's not our mission statement, it may have to be added to it, or at least always in the back of my mind, is to try to be as self-sustainable as possible. We don't want to have to someday go ask either the legislature or the county executive to be added to a budget to help support the organization. And while we're not there today, and we've taken some great steps to save some money, it's something that we have to, more vision planning. So maybe at a board retreat, we talk maybe 5 or 10-year horizon type stuff. But if we continue to burn through at least $500,000 a year, and we have $8 million in the bank, simple math is within X amount of years, you're out of money. Right? So we don't.
If we don't do any projects and bring in new revenue, but yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different things when it comes to that. But this is just one step in trying to make us feel a little more comfortable.
And I will, for the October meeting, I will have updated CD and money market rates and everything. We're getting just because those, continue to change. And I've added the credit unions locally as well. Even though they're not approved right now, that's something you can change. You can resolve to change that and add other financial institutions.
So that's something to take a look at. When we have a chance.
Yeah, in our meeting today, the faculty meeting, most of our money is with the credit union, and then most of their returns. That's where we have it.
Yeah, I'm seeing that some of those rates are better. So this is what you were thinking. So you'll have all those to decide from, and hopefully this gives you a little bit more idea with a little bit of cash flow of what what needs to go out. And the Heritage Trail, for example, being the greatest expenditure, we need to kind of save reserve for. But beyond that, I think won't be that challenging to decide on a couple of investments to make. That's what I'm hoping for.
Can you give us a quick update on some of the stuff you've been talking, a quick update on some of the stuff you've been talking about in regards to the financial side? In the past, we had CFO, or at least a part-time CFO. You've started to dive into maybe looking at, as a part of a procurement, whether we want to use a financial consulting company or an accounting company or a CFO for hire, or at one level, even a full-time or another part-time or CFO. Where are you at with that, Phil? Have you uncovered anything, anybody that, like, how are others doing it, any best practices, those type of things?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix where some people have a part-time CFO. Most of the agencies I talk to do have a full-time CFO. That's just, they have enough activity going on. Dutchess, for example, that's what they do. We have talked about sharing one. I think that's something we could talk further about. Right now, obviously, we've expanded our relationship with UHY beyond kind of bookkeeping and reconciling to handling more CFO duties. I don't know if it's a perfect fit for the arrangement. I don't even for them. I don't know if we get maybe some of the analysis we may get with somebody that's not doing just kind of back office accounting work. But I would like to do real procurement, as you've asked for this, where we have a few options that we can compare to. I did speak with one, when I was in New York State EDC, I asked, I really tried to utilize my time there, speaking to law firms, local labor auditors, and such. So I only came across, I got a recommendation for one, what I'll call CFO for hire, really it's hourly basically, that a firm that does it for other IDAs around the region. I'm trying to find another one, so I have something else to compare it to. But comparing it to the way we work with UH right now, or comparing it to an in-house CFO, I think those are the things we're looking at. Langdon, you and I had a conversation. You're kind of looking at the figures of what we were paying for, essentially, and trying to keep under that amount that we talked about. So looking at what we expended for with the past CFO here. Which, by the way, that person was brought in. They were supposed to be part-time, but then made full-time. So that was grown into a larger position than was originally intended. So I definitely think we can get away with part-time work, and it may be more economical to do it outside. So I don't know if it's too much to try and fit in for October to do that, or if that's something we could do in subsequent months. But I would like to bring some of these folks in to present and really give you good options to be able to see what would be better.
Yeah, I think like once you feel comfortable with presenting it, and then we can bring people in. So,
okay. I present them in another month.
Yeah, so I would think that we'd have to go through a procurement. I mean, you'd have to publicly solicit it, like we would normally do, just like we're doing with the labor, just like we're doing with general counsel, just like we're doing with the CEO position. Get some feelers out there, get people to respond, put them together, and maybe we have whether it's a committee meeting or a portion of a regularly scheduled meeting where we just talk about that aspect. I think that would be good. I mean, is it going to be done in 2 weeks? I don't expect, unless there's miracles out there, I don't expect it to be done in 2 weeks.
Right.
It's something that we have to strive for, because I think it's one of our weaknesses right now. It's one of our weaknesses, and I don't want, and I also want to better understand what is our responsibilities through state legislation of what we have to have. I know there's a bunch of financial questions asked on our parish reports, and who's going to sign off on those type of questions,
Right.
Are they more financial in nature? Are they more legal in nature? We're all novices at this, so we have to figure that out to the best of our ability, so that each year we continually just strive to get a little bit better across the way. So I think all the options that you're looking at, I think, are things that we have to consider. So.
Anyway, I'll be ready soon to present that.
So the only question you had said there was a firm or someone interested in part-time, and then there's others that we're looking at like a full-time basis, that they're not, the ones who are doing full-time wouldn't consider part-time at all?
Yeah, so when full-time and part-time, I meant in-house. So where we originally was going to be a part-time in-house CFO, and then it became full-time. There was also a relationship there. We could keep that, relationship at IBM, so that's part of it. But anything else that I'm talking about is like CFO for hire is hourly basis. They do the work they need to do. They do, in many cases, come present to the board every month. They provide financial statements, all of that. They could kind of fill in with the investment piece and make recommendations where I'm not supposed to do that. They're qualified to do that, but the other piece. And that's generally, and I've looked at the fees that are made, it's generally hourly, so we have to kind of get a little closer to see how long it would take, you know, how many hours is necessary. Yeah, that's the piece there. And then the other option is what we're doing now, using a firm basically where it's really back office accounting work really they're doing, not so much CFO type work is the way I look at it now, what we're getting. I don't know that it's any, I'm not saying it's a failure on their part, from the UHY, for example, it's just what they understood the relationship to be and really what our needs really are. I do think we need a little bit more kind of consultative financial, you know, support.
And I'm not gonna speak for the county itself, but in the past, years ago, the county finance commissioner took on this role for previous boards. I don't think we have that commitment from the county today. They want the separation, just like we're not having the CEO is not gonna be a county position, Kelly's not a county position, those type of things. So it feels like the separation from what was done, I would say 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago to today is different for Orange County. There are counties out there that do it that way. They are county-run positions and they are managed by the county or by cities. So, you know, some cities have IDAs and some municipalities have it. It might be someone like their town supervisor or something like that. You know, you can see different examples of those type of things. I think in this instance, though, we don't have we're not going down the direction of using county employees to do this for us. Not speaking for them, no, but I don't think that that's what we're entertaining today. So we have to come up with some solution, and it can't just be all borne by a CEO. I think you need someone with more financial backgrounds and with the assistance of general counsel who's going to steer that person and this organization in the right direction of what we have to do, which, you know, trying to interpret legal fees on what we can do and what we can't do when it comes down to finances is key. But it's definitely something that I think we have to look into. And like I said, it's not going to be done in 2 weeks. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other items? Could we be done in an hour?
Yeah, I think, you know, something, you know, think about, yeah, for future finance meetings is looking at our fee schedule. You know, take a look at that. That's something that we should always do at least every year, you know, and make sure that it's competitive, that we're not losing out on projects, because there's obviously that cost benefit analysis. If it costs too much to apply for something and the benefits are equal, why would they apply? And we haven't had application yet. So I do worry about that. So we should do that maybe at our next meeting, whenever that is, our next committee meeting. Okay. As well as, you know, we're going to be getting a lot of our solicitations are going to start coming back. We're going to start making decisions about direct expenses for consultants to do some of the stuff that's going to affect our budgeting. Should take that into account. Obviously, the hiring of a CEO, got to take that into account, and any other positions that we deem necessary between now and whatever, if we want to go down that route. And on the expense side, obviously, we're going to have some big decisions coming up in regards to some of the accelerators whose leases are coming due, and those type of things. And then what type of project do we want to move forward? I mean, I know they'll put a placeholder in there, I think, for a potential shovel-ready, because I think, as Paul graciously said at the last E&E committee, the unbelievable success of the Warwick project with putting a little bit in and getting 20, 30, 40, 60 times back in capital investment, and then the job creation, and then this, you know, that kind of, it seemed to put us well above what other IDAs have done, and was, I think, a major success within the last 18 months. Granted, it's under construction, and, you know, it takes a construction season to really realize, but those type of things. So those are all things that the board will decide upon, and if there's any other type of programs that's allowable by statute that we can do, we'll look into it, because we want to be the best. You know, we want to be able to, you know, continue to increase tax ratables, and increase employment, and all the good things that we're put here to do. So, any questions, concerns, any ideas, anything? I mean, you'll send us this electronically, and the hope is that if you have any questions, we can ask them over the next couple of weeks. And then if we have any ones that we need to decide upon or change anything, we can make last-minute changes, and then potentially vote on the budget at the next board meeting. Little packed, because I think we'll have most of the interviews, not all the interviews will be done by then, so it might also be something that we'll be voting upon at that board meeting, as well as some of the leases that are coming due. Well, Bill's assumed some things, or some things that homework-wise, or I'd say, more, less homework-wise, more cleanup-wise, we have to make decisions upon and vote upon in regards to certain things. Other than that, I think you put it together very well, Bill. I mean, it's, pretty simple. Obviously, at the end of the year with staff and with a financial auditor, we'll put together year-end financials and we'll know exactly what our actuals were. We'll, hopefully know that by the end of January at the latest, because there's a reporting requirement for that. That has to go in, just like we did, I think we did it in March. I think it was one of our first things we
Right.
did was work with bond counsel to help us with the Paris reports, and we got, Judelson,
Donald Teal, to be.
yeah, to do the, audit, who helped us with,
Oh, yeah.
with the financials, right? I think that was one of the first things we did as a board.
Yes, absolutely.
Which, and that was kind of late, that was March-ish, and, that's usually done January, February, so, but I'm good.
Good, Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
All right. Any other questions, concerns?
No.
All right, make a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Awesome.
All right, excellent.